How much should we be taxed? It's no secret that many people dislike paying taxes, but what if there were another way? Would it be possible to create a fully functioning society without the need for any income tax? Today I decided to put this idea to the test in SimCity 4 by creating the first ever society to function completely without the need for any tax. So it all began with an experiment, the first city. I dubbed it No Taxolonia, and spawned into the blank landmass, year zero, $500,000 in the bank's starting capital, and the dream of creating the perfect society with no tax. After placing the initial coal power plant to put our city on the grid, I was almost immediately confronted with a major problem. Who would pay for the power plant? It cost 100 simoleons a month to run, and we had absolutely no tax revenue, or any source of money. But let's just forget about that for now, and keep going anyway. I built farms to sustain the food supply, then padded in commercial and residential zones at the center. And right before anyone moved into town, I lowered the taxes all to 0%. No Taxolonia was open for business, and demand soared right from the start. People marched like ants into the burgeoning city in droves, cresting a population of 1,000 after only 1 year. Unfortunately, though, they didn't have any money, and they didn't give us any money, and so we had no money. Or at least, no money coming in. We still had what was left over from what I'd already built. Very quickly, it became apparent nothing pays for itself, especially power and transportation maintenance. So, right from the start, our budget was already in the red, losing 330 simoleons per month. But for now, let's just continue to ignore that. After all, we still have $460,000 of our starting capital left in the bank. There's plenty of breathing room here. If we couldn't make money from tax, we'd need to resort to alternative means to obtain civic revenue. As a potential solution, the city ordinance to legalize gambling offered a potential state revenue of 100 simoleons per month. An opportunity at some free cash flow. We signed the deal, nearly balancing the budget, but unfortunately, it still wouldn't be enough to cover the costs of both power and transportation in our city. So naturally, we decided to abolish funding for the transportation department entirely. As a consequence, potholes appeared the next day on every inch of paved road throughout the town, leading to traffic accidents, unhappy advisors, and the baffling fading away of automobiles into nothingness. I just continued to ignore most of these issues, though. Lots of people were now unemployed and couldn't get to work, since the roads, now freckled with potholes, were impossible to navigate. So everyone just stayed at home. In the meantime, I continued expanding the city with more farms along the periphery. When my advisors expressed their differing opinions, I just ignored them and continued building. When there was a fire on the edge, I ignored it until it burned down a whole city block. We didn't need that block anyway. The city grew, cresting a population of 5,000 people and rising. Everything seemed good until we started running out of electricity from the power plant. Unfortunately, with a budget of only $100 per month, we were unable to supply the power plant with enough voltage to power everyone's homes. And so, faced with the dire reality of an underfunded city, we made the difficult choice of funding only $100 worth of electricity each month. From the money, of course, that we'd got from legalizing gambling. This seemed like a good idea, rationing power usage. But here's where I'm ashamed to admit that it wasn't a good idea. So we turned the power on and off, expelling and ushering back in our population, leading to a Sisyphean series of brownouts, which was, fortunately in the end, enough to bring back the original population of 5,000 people to live in a perpetual state of the lights flickering on and off for the remainder of their unemployed existences, staring out their windows at an array of potholes, preventing their escape. And so, relatively satisfied, but also now stagnant in our town's growth, I decided to put city number 1, No Taxolonia, on the shelf for a while I pondered the lessons from my time as mayor to set out on a new embarkment, on an improved version of my utopian society. So I began again and dubbed its neighbor City Number 2, Freedonia, the better version of our tax-free city. A clean slate and starting fresh again at year 0 with all the lessons from my first city in mind, I embarked on the construction of Freedonia. If no Taxalonia had failed because it had no plan for making money, well, Freedonia would rise like a phoenix reborn out of its ashes. We started off Freedonia with wind instead of coal power, which we were now actually able to fund. And learning our lessons from the first city, we spaced out our homes and factories far enough apart so that fire couldn't spread and burn down the whole city again. These were good ideas, but still, we needed more money. But how? Well, with a little critical thinking, if we can't tax our people, we can put them to work. So I zoned in the center of our town a massive landfill for the storage of garbage. Freedonia, come dump your crap here. That is to say, since we had nothing else to offer, we volunteered our land to storing away other people's garbage from nearby towns, including, of course, our neighboring city of No Taxalonia, which still had a lot of issues. So, seizing opportunity, we struck cash deals with our neighbors to take their garbage off their hands and pile it into our dump for a monthly payment. And so, seemingly overnight, with our business plan hatched, we had a mountain of crap all in our midst, lending us a lucrative new income stream of over $500 a month. It was brilliant. The only flaw in the plan was now we had a massive mountain of trash located directly in the middle of our city. Generally speaking, people don't like living next to the dump. What to do? You can't simply bulldoze garbage in SimCity, that's not allowed. So instead, I decided that we might opportunistically utilize the strategic positioning of the dump and lack of fire departments, but this time for the sake of civic redevelopment. That is to say, we zoned densely packed, hazardously flammable industrial zones all surrounding the garbage dump in the hopes that their businesses would, burn themselves down along with the garbage. It was foolproof, if a bit immoral. But, in the end we did it for the greater good of the town, and I think that's all that matters. With the new money and development, we erected even more wind turbines for power. Everything was going swimmingly, all according to plan. Of course, that is, until an actual fire broke out and, it failed to burn down the garbage. That's when I realized that, as it turns out in SimCity 4, garbage is unfortunately fireproof, impervious to flames, which ultimately is too bad because that was my whole plan and it would have been a pretty awesome exploit to pull off. City number 3. After a brief attempt to salvage and even gentrify City number 2 with an exciting bus stop, I ultimately abandoned Freedonia to the winds of time alongside its misfit neighbor, No Taxalonia. So, with all the tuition paid from these first 2 tax-free cities, I set out once again with renewed resolve and determination. They say the third time's the charm, and I was determined that this would be the greatest city of them all. The result of all my lessons and failures poured into the ultimate town, perfect in every way. The third city. We learned so many lessons from the first 2 failures that this town had to work. It all began, of course, with the construction of wind turbines for affordable power. And then, of course, residential, commercial, and industrial zones, all spaced so that fires couldn't spread between them in the unplanned event of a conflagration. Check and check. All are valuable lessons imported from past city failures. But this time, we also added in toll booths to nickel and dime our residents on their way to work. It's not taxation because they choose to go to work instead of staying at home. Not that the roads were very good. I mean, we'd made maybe a couple dollars every month on the tolls too. But it all adds up. Line it in with a huge trash dump once again to start taking garbage off our neighbors' hands for a small cash sum each month. And before you know it, we've got a whole lineup of money-making schemes implemented. The only problem with the garbage collection this time was that since our neighboring cities were just so full of crap from the last few hundred years, we were overwhelmed by a large, unsightly, and above all, more expensive pile of garbage than it was worth taking on. That is to say, the trash neighbor deal was trash. It not only lost us thousands of dollars, but also buried our city in a mountain of crap. So to make it look like we were still trying, we shut down funding for our own sanitation department. Overall, netting $1 a month for agreeing to pick up our neighbor's garbage, but then never actually showing up to pick it up every day. Profit. From here, the city expanded. More zoning, more toll booths. When someone's house went on fire accidentally, we destroyed their neighbors' homes. But we did it for the greater good of the town. And if you're that dumb, you probably just don't deserve to live here anyway. Next, we tried gentrifying the town with bus stops, but that didn't work either. Ultimately, the way things were going, I could see that everything was beginning to roll along at a very slow trickle financially. The truth was that if we wanted access to the real moneymakers, we'd have to put a big hole in our budget. And so, in an effort to spur federal investment, I built a ton of power plants and wasted all of our money to anger the city accountant and strike up a deal with nuclear to allow the building of a hazardous missile experimentation silo in the middle of our town, right next to the dump. Naturally, we welcomed the $450 a month payments with open arms. This was, in fact, more money than any of our elaborate Ponzi business ventures had earned us to date. Which, of course, naturally got me thinking again. You know, maybe if people aren't willing to pay for a city, maybe they don't deserve a city. That's not to say that the accidental nuclear strike of 2055 on our residents was an inside job. Of course not. That was an accident. I would never, ever intentionally launch a nuclear missile at innocent people's homes in order to oust them from our 0% tax paradise and make way for an array of state-sponsored lobbyist corporations to open doors on nuclear testing and toxic waste dumps. I would never do that, of course. Would I? Well, I guess it's up to you and the remaining 5 residents of No Tax City to decide that for yourselves. I am morally justified. I did what I had to for the greater good. Now, No Tax City is stable and profitable, netting $900 of profit a month. I believe that I have the moral high ground. But there you have it. If you want to say something nice about me, you can leave a message there in the comments section below. That's all for now. As always, I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. A big thanks to my patrons who experience gentrification riding the bus each day. Until next time.